On today's edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the new UFC 288 co-main event featuring Gilbert Burns and Belal Muhammad, 5 rounds in the welterweight division. Really excited to get in this one and preview this fight. If you haven't watched the show before, basically I go through a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of different stats and tangibles, all this stuff, and then I give you my pick at the end. Will it be relevant to you? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. I like going and looking at every little angle when it comes to previewing fights, and yeah, this is going to be a great one. So glad they got this done. This was supposed to be Charles Oliveira, Beneil Dariush. They moved that fight to UFC 289, and we get this fight as a 5-round main event on short notice. I'm glad they're doing this 5 rounds. Got to thank the UFC for that right off the bat. How many fights have we seen that have title implications that they've made 3 rounds because it was a co-main event? Silly rule. I think any fight that has any sort of title implication should be 5 rounds. So kudos to the UFC here. Quick tail of the tape. Belal Muhammad 22-3, Gilbert Burns 22-5. 34 years old for Belal, 36 for Gilbert Burns, 5'11 to 5'10, 72 to 71. So Belal, slight height and reach advantage in this fight. He's also a little bit younger here as well. So yeah, not by much, and even records are pretty similar too. It's actually how crazy this fight is being put together on short notice. Let's start first though with Gilbert Burns. He's the one here that's actually fought for a title. Belal hasn't, although some people feel like, including myself, I think he should have got the shot against Leon, but nonetheless, we get a cool fight here. Gilbert Burns is currently the number 5 ranked welterweight. He's got 6 knockouts, 9 submissions, and 7 decisions. Like I mentioned, 36 years old, 5'10" with a 71-inch reach. He's a 3-time world champion and world gold medalist in grappling. He's a 3rd-degree BJJ black belt. He trains at a Kill Cliff MMA. Kind of interesting there. One of Belal Muhammad's good buddies there, Gerald Mershart, also training at Kill Cliff. I don't think they'll be trading any secrets or anything, but a little interesting note there. Gilbert Burns has also had performance of the night 4 times against Christos Giagos, Alex Oliveira, Damian Maia, and Tyron Woodley. He's had fight of the night 1 time against Hamzat Chimaev. Gilbert Burns made his amateur debut back in July of 2011, made his MMA debut in January of 2012, and his UFC debut in January of 2014. Am I going in the order here? Yes, I am. Some notable wins that Gilbert Burns has had, and by the way, his UFC record 12-5. He's got 6 stoppage wins. Some of those wins include Gunnar Nelson, Damian Maia, Tyron Woodley, Stephen Thompson, Neil Magny, and most recently Jorge Masvidal. What do they all have in common? Those are all wins at welterweight. He didn't actually have a lot of notable wins when he fought at lightweight. Some notable losses, however, have been at lightweight. Rashid Magomedov, Michel Prazeres, Dan Hooker, Kamaru Usman, and Hamzat Chimaev. So yeah, the last 2 being the only welterweight losses he's had of just Chimaev and Usman. Not bad to have those on your resume. He's only had a couple layoffs in his career, not many. Going from Wonderboy to Neil Magny, Wonderboy to Hamzat Chimaev, there's a 273-day layoff, and then going from Chimaev to Magny, there's 287-day layoff. And here, we're getting this fight in less than a month, so he's sort of going in reverse order here. Burns getting a very quick turnaround in this one after defeating Jorge Masvidal by decision last month at UFC 287. Burns has had a few issues and injuries. We're not going to go through those today because I talked about that last time. How about weight classes? Let's talk about that. Gilbert Burns has competed 14 times at lightweight. He's had 2 catchweight fights, 1 at 160 and 158. And then he's had 9 fights at welterweight in his career. Kind of a key thing just because, again, Burns on the smaller side, but I think you could say the same thing with Belal Muhammad in the division too, just with both of their heights and reaches in these fights here. There's a couple quick stats here for Gilbert Burns. If you want to have a look on the screen here, I'll just show you guys visually too. Sometimes I like doing that. So Gilbert Burns, if you look at his stats, he lands significant strikes, 3.38 per minute, significant striking accuracies at 47%, significant strike defense at 54%, which is great. That's very good, over half of that. And then takedown defense is 47%. So we'll see if Belal goes for a takedown. We'll see. And then significant strike defense is at 37%. Takedown accuracy is at 37%. I got that mixed up. But yeah, so he doesn't get a lot of takedowns, or he's not very accurate, I should say, with his takedowns here as well. And his submission average is 0.6. His takedown average, though, is 2.16 within 15 minutes, something like that. So yeah, some interesting stats there on Gilbert Burns. But let's get to Belal Muhammad, his opponent, who stepped up on short notice to take this fight. So Belal Muhammad, you can see there, 22-3 with 1 no contest, the no contest against Leon Edwards. He's got 5 knockouts, 1 submission, and 16 decisions. He is 34 years old. He's 5'11" with a 72-inch reach. He's the number 4 ranked UFC welterweight. He's a BJJ purple belt and trains at a Chicago fight team. He's the former Titan FC welterweight champion. Belal Muhammad has got performance of the night 2 times against Takashi Sato and Sean Brady. He's got fight of the night 1 time against Alan Jouban. He's the 5th highest decision wins percentage. In UFC history, he's got the 5th highest win percentage. So he's got 10 decision wins, 10 of his, anyways, he's got a high amount of decision wins is kind of what we're getting at. And he's tied for 6th with most unanimous decision wins in UFC history. That would be a better stat. Said that a lot more proper. Belal Muhammad made his amateur debut way back in September of 2010. Did not fight again until March of 2012. Made his MMA debut in August of 2012. And then made his UFC debut in July of 2016. When he fought, who did he fight? Oh, it was Joban. That's right. That fight. I should know that. I think I was at that fight. What else do we have? He is 12-3 in the UFC with 3 stoppages. Actually, that might be wrong. 1 second here. Yeah, no, that, I think that makes sense here. As far as that, so anyway, some notable wins that he has in the division include Damian Maia, Stephen Thompson, Vicente Luque, and Sean Brady. What do they all have in common? Those were all of his last opponents. So that was kind of the knock on Belal before. Is that, he had some good wins, but, he had some, impressive victories, but not over the most notable opponents here. And then did have 2 losses in between there, 3 losses, I should say, to Alan Jouban, Vicente Luque. Luque actually knocked him out, which in hindsight is kind of interesting because he ended up beating him in the rematch. And then he lost to Jeff Neal as well. Which, I mean, I still think Jeff's a very good fighter in that weight class. No shame in losing there. And then he had the weird eye poke with Leon Edwards too. We have to mention that. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about Belal. He's had a couple injuries in his career. He was supposed to fight Zaleski back in September of 2018. He had an injury there. And then he was supposed to fight Diego Lima the first time on this fight night card, but then he had tested positive for COVID. That was sort of another thing. He's been pretty active if you kind of look at what he's done in his career. He's had a couple layoffs going from Chance Rencounter to Jeff Neal. There was a 232-day layoff, and then going from Lyman Good to Diego Lima, there's a 238-day layoff in his career. But Belal really has turned a corner his last couple fights. I think you could really go back to maybe when he fought Diego Lima, and then sort of after that, obviously there's the eye poke, but then, the win over Maia, solid dominant win. Stephen Thompson, dominant win. He was a big underdog in that fight. And then also an underdog against Luque, and knocked out Sean Brady, actually handed Sean Brady the first loss of his career. So Belal doing quite well overall. If you want to look at some of the stats here we'll go to the fact that Belal, even though he's had a lot of decision wins, there hasn't been any close decision wins. In other words, there weren't any like split decisions or fights where like, oh, maybe that could have gone the other way. He's never had anything like that. So despite the fact that Belal does go to the scorecards a lot, that is one thing to sort of keep in mind when it comes to all that. A couple of UFC stats here for Belal Muhammad. If you want to look on the screen here, you can see the significant strikes landed per minute is 4.47. That's pretty high, actually. That's pretty good stat there. Significant striking accuracy is at 42%. Significant striking defense is at 58%, so it doesn't get hit a ton. Check this takedown defense out, 92%. Now, that could be as well that a lot of his opponents haven't tried to take him down, but still, 92%, that definitely is a bit eye-popping. And as far as his takedown accuracy, it's at 35% in this fight. We do have some odds on this, even though it's still a little bit early. Gilbert Burns being the favorite, that's kind of how I figured it would be. And even looking on Tapology, you've got 66% of people picking Gilbert Burns, Belal Muhammad, 34%. This is a really, really, really tough fight to call. I think that, Belal Muhammad, like I mentioned, has turned a page. Striking's coming a long way. Like, to finish Sean Brady, very good win for him. Like, to go out there, like, if he would have just won a decision against Sean Brady, big deal. But the fact that he finished Brady and he really turned the corner in that fight, because I thought the first round was fairly even. I mean, you could have given it to Belal, but I think most people did actually. But that second round when he came out and he, just really was overwhelming Sean Brady in that fight. I was very impressive getting the standing TKO finish. That was incredible. So that showed, I think very highly of Sean Brady, that showed that Belal is in that contender spot, and that's well earned. Now with Gilbert Burns, just going over their last couple of opponents here, Masvidal, you can't really take much away from that. I know people were also complaining that Masvidal, he didn't get the finish in that fight. How many guys have finished Masvidal? Not that many. And then Neil Magny, I mean, we've seen him get finished a number of times in the first round, so can't put too much stock into that. I actually think the fight we can take the most away from recently that Burns has had that I think you can use as an argument in this fight is the Chimaev fight. I saw a lot of people saying Chimaev was going to steamroll Gilbert Burns, and that didn't happen. Burns made it a very close fight, and I know it was only 3 rounds, but Burns looked good in that one, man. Like, in a losing effort, I think his stock, if anything, went up in that one. Very, very, very impressed with that. Not to mention the fact he's fought for the title. And he finished Damian Maia in the first round as opposed to Belal, who took him to a decision, if you want to use a little bit of MMA math there. So the quality of opponents definitely goes to Gilbert Burns in terms of what he's been able to do. And, he's good everywhere. Like, this is a guy who has a really good jiu-jitsu pedigree that's always in his back pocket if he wants to use it. I was kind of surprised, didn't do more of it against Masvidal in their fight, but that might be a path to victory here for Gilbert Burns if you're kind of thinking of a way this ends. Now, I think in the stand-up department, I don't know. Like, I think Burns' stand-up has improved significantly, and I think, you probably do give the striking edge to Belal, but I think Burns can hang with a lot of different guys, including even with like Chimaev and certain of the exchanges, he was fine there too. So I think, Gilbert Burns is extremely well-rounded and makes him a very dangerous opponent here. He is 36, so, he is getting a little bit up there. That's one thing to kind of keep in mind in this fight, but you could also argue he's probably in the prime right now, the way he's been performing. Like, again, to go out there and take care of Neil Magny so quickly, that was really cool and very impressive as well. Belal, like I said, he's had a couple good wins. I think with Thompson, if we're being honest here, I think that he figured out a good game plan to beat Thompson, because I believe he fought who fought Thompson. It was Burns who fought Thompson before that, right? Yeah, so he lost to Burns first. So I think Belal kind of just copied Burns' game plan and went out there and finished him. So that was still a good win though, because Thompson, very good striker. Vicente Luque, I think we've seen, Luque lose the fight even after this one. Maybe Luque's a bit on the decline. We'll see. So that's kind of tough to say. But the Brady win really puts him in that category. So you can kind of cancel those other two things that I kind of set out there. Anyways, long story short, who am I going with? I'm going with Gilbert Burns. I think what it comes down to for me is like, Belal is very good in every area. I think his cardio's, good. I think his stand-ups come a long way. I don't think he excels in any certain area, whereas I think Burns does excel on the ground, even though we don't see him get a lot of submission victories. Not to mention the fact that Burns is just has been in there with better guys, and he hasn't really looked that bad. Like, yeah, the Usman fight is probably the only fight he's had, and maybe it was the fact that he was fighting a former teammate. I don't know, but that's the only fight he's really looked bad at welterweight, right? Like, forget about lightweight. People always bring up, oh, well, Dan Hooker knocked him out. Well, yeah, Gilbert Burns almost had to cut off a leg because he cut so much weight to make 155. I have no doubt that the weight cut played a role in Gilbert Burns losing that fight. I think if him and Dan Hooker fought at 170, Burns wins that fight. But anyways, back to the point is that, I just think Burns just a little bit better here. I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to go to war. This is going to be like a fight of the year. Really, really exciting fight. I think it's going to go close to the 5 rounds. I think it ends in the 4th round. Now, the question is who gets the finish? That's where things get interesting. I could see it happening by either guy, honestly. This is honestly like a coin flip fight in my opinion, but I think Burns gets it. I think what happens is Burns he's a little bit more experienced. Pretty durable overall. I think he clips Belal at some point, gets him down to the ground eventually. And even though Belal's got good takedown defense, and then I think he works his ground game and he gets a submission win. Again, we have not seen Burns get a submission win. He submitted Neil Magny 2 fights ago, but you kind of get where I'm going at. A lot of the fights prior to that were not submission wins at welterweight anyways, right? So I think Burns, again, just, goes for broke, gets a couple good shots in, Belal's down, and then while he's down, Gilbert Burns submits him. So I'm going to go Gilbert Burns 4th round submission in this fight. But I'm telling you guys, this is one of the toughest fights to call this year, because I do think Belal has done so much over the last couple fights that I think it matches a lot of what Burns is going to do in this matchup. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Who are you picking in this fight? Who do you think gets it done? Very curious to hear your thoughts on this. And if there's any other fights you want me to preview that are coming up here, let me know. I got a few in the works already that are going to be going live. If you're on Patreon, you can watch those already. That's it. Follow me, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, @Lynch on Sports. I'm James. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.